Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. And we're glad that you're here tonight, whether you're watching us live or watching the video later, or if you're listening to the podcast at a later date. We're really happy that you decided to join our audience.
Indeed we are.
We already have a couple of comments. It says, Paul Hollis says, hello, Rob and Joan. Hello, Paul. Glad to see you here. Joe Conjal said, hi, Rob and Joan.
Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe. And the Author's Porch says, hi, Rob and Joan.
Hello,
Author's Porch. Oh, and George DeSmug says, I'm here on with the rat killing.
Rat killing? Are we going to kill rats?
I hope not.
Oh, no. I hope not.
Okay.
Jeez. This is taking a dark turn.
Yes, early in the show.
Are you okay, George? Well, I want to remind everybody about the Voice of Indie podcast right after this broadcast. Their guest tonight is Najma Thomas. She's an author and professor. And that's Beam Weeks and Gary G's are the hosts of that. And the details are on a little video at the end of our broadcast. Tells you exactly how to go over there. So you can catch them there, Blog Talk Radio. Episode Rewind this Saturday at 5:30 p.m. right here where you're watching right now. It's a replay of Doug Gardam's episode. And he was described as the hardest working novelist that you've never heard of.
Yeah.
By the Canadian newspaper.
Right.
I don't know whether that's good or bad. I don't know, but it's catchy. He wrote The Musician, The Actor, and The Drive-In. And they all sounded really, really pretty good. So check him out. Next week, we will be traveling, and we will be broadcasting the show live from San Leon, Texas. We're going to have several authors on that evening. We're going to be on. Of course, George DeSmukes, Becca Jones, and C.W. Hawes will make an appearance, and some other local authors who we've not met yet, Mark Lardis, Lewis Whistler, and Sherry Thompson. And there may be one or two others that might join us as well. So we'll find out when we get there. Anyway, that's next Wednesday, live from San Leon.
George DeSmuk says, oh, no, you've never heard of rate killing? Oh, rate killing.
Rate killing. Oh, okay.
Different than rat killing.
Different than rat killing.
On with the show.
Unless you're the Pied Piper.
We definitely want to kill those rates.
Only thing I have in the news tonight is just released yesterday was Men Lying Dead in a Field by Richard Schwint. It's the book 14 entry in the Magnolia Bluff series, Crime Chronicles.
I love that. I love that title.
Love the title and can't wait to read the book.
Yeah. These are always psychological.
That just was released yesterday, so hot off the presses. So would you like to introduce our guest?
Oh, you have the honors.
Oh, okay. From Australia, let's see, wait a minute. George says, "Oh no, rat, as in a big mouse."
Okay, rat killing. Okay.
Now, which is it, rat killing or rat killing?
No, it's rat killing. No, I've never heard that expression.
Must be from Texas.
Rat, as in a big mouse.
There
okay.
Live from Australia, the moment we've all been waiting for. Historical fiction writer Paul Rushworth-Brown. Hello, Paul.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Joan. How are you? Welcome to sunny Sydney.
Thank you.
Great
and it's
to be
morning there, right? So we should say good morning.
Good morning to you.
9 o'clock.
So you're talking to us from the future.
Yeah.
Oh, is it Thursday?
I love time travel.
Yeah, the time traveling is wonderful.
Is it Thursday morning there?
Wednesday.
Oh.
It's Wednesday morning.
Sorry, Thursday morning. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Now wait a minute.
Sorry, I'm getting confused.
Is it rat killing or rat killing? Is it Wednesday or is it Thursday? This is a crazy show.
Actually, I think George is actually referring to a scene in my novel Skulduggery, where it describes rat baiting. So, which was actually sort of like a kind of gambling or sport back in the 16th, 17th century in England.
Wow. Okay.
So obviously he's read Skulduggery.
So Joe Conja wants to know, is he really there? LOL. Yeah. Since he doesn't know whether it's Wednesday or Thursday.
Yeah, he's really there.
And the author's porch says, "Nice to see you, Paul. Hope the future is treating you well." Now, if that would only work for stock options, but it doesn't.
No.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. I mean, we can't ask you who won the Kentucky Derby or anything like that. No, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way.
I can tell you that New South Wales lost the rugby league the other night. That's about it. That was passed.
George says, "See, this guy knows his history. Thank you, Paul."
There you go. That's why we have Paul on here, George.
And that's why we have George in the audience.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So you were on our show before. What else? What's happened since you were on before?
Oh, some very interesting, exciting things have happened. So you might notice the back of my chair there. I've actually linked up with the author's porch, and they actually sponsor me, and I actually have featured in their magazine this coming July, which is quite exciting. It's quite a lovely magazine, actually. It's got for anybody who's right into reading. There's some amazing articles in here about different authors and their features and the books that they've written, and there's even a which I liked. There's even a something called a cosmic corner, which gives you your what's it called, a horoscope.
Yeah.
So listen to mine. Gemini, after Mars' recent 7th month retrograde, in Gemini, you have been inspired to communicate, collaborate, and create with compassion. Show up as a star you are at heart.
Cool.
My lucky color is pink, and my lucky numbers are 2 and 3.
Well,
how about that?
2023. So
yeah,
there you go. It must be your lucky year.
Yeah. So obviously, been working really hard on marketing of Red Winter Journey and Skulduggery. My third novel, Dream of Courage. This is just a mock-up. Dream of Courage is coming out in November, published by Shawline Publishing in Melbourne. I have to get this done like this because my wife likes to read them and critique my work. She's my best fan and my biggest critic.
We've got a few comments. Joe Conjal says Back to the Future Part 4. And the author's porch tells us Joanne Angel Barry Colin is a fantastic astrologer. Marjorie Daring says, "Oops, late tonight not by too much." Hi, Marjorie. Welcome to the show. And Joe Conjal has a question. is the magazine electronic format and paper?
Yeah. It's so you can get it on Amazon. If you just do a search on, if you go to the Author's Porch website and just click on the links there, that takes you straight to Amazon. I think the electronic copy is something like $2.99, and obviously you can order the paper copy as well.
Is it the authorsporch.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually, but if you do a Google search on the Author's Porch magazine, that's probably better.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, that's pretty exciting.
And I understand you're writing your third book, right? So first, let's go over your first books, Red Winter Journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was my second. That was my second novel.
Oh,
There's
was
my
it?
first Skulduggery.
Skulduggery was
So
the first.
Skulduggery, it was published in 2021. I originally self-published it, and then Shawline Publishing down in Melbourne picked it up and republished it and distributed it, marketed it, and then obviously I've signed a contract with them for Red Winter Journey and Dream of Courage, which comes out next November. So been with them for quite a while now.
That's what he just said.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dream of Courage.
Yeah.
That's a pretty cover.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mock cover actually. Shawline Publishing will come up with a better one, believe me.
Oh.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I mean, looking at their covers, it's so exciting when you sort of like get a book out from them because I mean they're sort of like graphic artists are wonderful. You know, they just they really represent the story with their cover. And you know, Red Winter Journey. You know, there's a sort of like a father holding his young son's hand, and that novel is actually a journey. It's a story of young Tommy Rushworth who gets kidnapped into the parliamentary army, and they steal him away, and his grandfather and his father actually go on this treacherous journey to try and get him back, and it takes place in the time of the English Civil War, but you know, it's a bit of romance, you know, love story. There's a couple of I suppose side stories off of that, yeah, look, it's all historically accurate, and lots of twists and turns that you don't see coming.
Beth Wordsdale says fantastic, and she also says Paul has amazing book reviews.
Yes.
And then the Author's Porch says Paul's books are fascinating. If you haven't read them, sorry, I keep getting notifications. If you haven't read them, you have to grab a copy. Jeez, just slow down my notifications. Where do you get the inspiration? The Author's Porch wants to know.
Well, interestingly enough, I've always been, even as a young teenager, I was always a bit of a history nerd. And then some time ago, about 5 years ago, I did a lot of family research and mainly for my kids. And I spent about 6 months developing this family history and traced my furthest away ancestor back to Haworth, Yorkshire in England, that you may know from Bronte countries. That's where the Bronte sisters grew up, you know, authors of Wuthering Heights and that. So probably about a year after that book was about 400 pages long, traced it back to 1590. Then about a year after that, I thought, you know, this Thomas Rushworth, you know, what was he like? What was his life like? And he was a copy holder on the moors of Yorkshire. And I've been there a number of times, and yeah, sort of like an amazing place, freezing cold even in summer, wild. You got moors, you got dales, you got. Anyway, it really sort of like I was really intrigued by what his life would have been like, because I actually found his name on a manor court roll, and he was called a copy holder, and he basically tenanted a 10-acre block of land from Lord Birkhead Esquire, who was actually a real lord and lived at in the Haworth Manor in Yorkshire. And so a copy holder, basically it's like a contract. He gets a copy of it. The Lord's man gets a copy of it. And what he does is he had to work for the Lord 3 days a week on the Lord's land so that he could basically tenant this 10 acres. And then of that 10 acres, a lot of that would have to go back to the Lord, and then obviously tithe to the church. So that was his life.
And as we talked about before, the first time that you were on the show, most of us really are from peasant stock.
Yeah, probably 80%, 85% of people in the Western world would have come from peasant stock. You were Irish, aren't you?
Yeah.
Irish background.
Yeah.
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 Yep. And I know I'm from peasant stock.
Yeah. And I mean, my ancestors were a rough lot. You know, they worked with sheep, and their lives were basically survival.
Pretty much the same as the Irish. A rough lot and worked with sheep.
Yeah.
A lot of sheep in
Ireland. And there's all my books are sort of like true to life, because they're very, very accurately portrayed, historic-wise, very, very heavily researched. And in Skulduggery and Red Winter Journey, even sort of like the local tavern in Howarth called the King's Arms is actually it's almost like a character in the novel. What happens in that tavern is it's interesting. I'm not going to say too much, but don't give it all away. As I said, lots of twists and turns. Sorry?
I said, don't give them it all away. You need to save some for the book. So Joe Conjal said he's half Irish and half Italian. Oh, Joe, I pity your poor mother.
That's an interesting combination.
Uh-huh. It is. Must have been a fiery household.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you spent all that time doing the research. How long do you think it actually took you to research all of that?
It usually takes me about a year to write a novel. And
that includes the research?
Yeah, including the research.
Okay.
And then interestingly enough, I don't plan anything. I just write research, and basically build up this story around these wonderful characters that have the same names as my ancestors.
Yeah.
So awesome. It's not a family story. It's more of a sort of like interesting historical, fictional mystery adventure. Skulduggery is a bit of a whodunit. A little bit of romance tucked in there. And I was just thinking about that this morning. In Skulduggery, there's a marriage, and it was quite amazing researching how a marriage worked back there in the 17th century. For instance, that in sort of like the beginning of the 1600s, they didn't have a marriage. Basically, what they did is they took barns, BANNS, and what they had to do is, and keeping in mind that this is in the time of the English Reformation, right? Skulduggery, and so that's when a lot of the Catholics were being ostracized, and a lot of the priests were actually killed, and the Catholic people were trying to hide them and all that type of thing. But getting back to the marriage, the barns, what they had to do is, if a man and a wife wanted to be together, they'd have to stand up in church 3 times every month for 3 months, and the preacher would actually say, "This is Thomas Rushworth and Agnes Hargreaves. Does anybody have any issues with these 2 people basically becoming man and wife. And if nobody said, no, yeah, I disagree with it, after a period of 3 months, then they would have a celebration, and they would basically have a hand fastening where, and this would quite often take place, in the church grounds, because they needed witnesses to witness this couple coming together. So they just put their hands together, and the priest would tie a ribbon around their hands, and then of course it was off to the big celebration afterwards.
How long did they have to keep the ribbon on there?
Just a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay.
That was also an Irish tradition, the hand fastening. And when
yeah.
And when I was young, actually, you still had to read the banns in the church for 3 months before the wedding.
Is that right?
Yeah, in the Catholic Church when I grew up. But I'm really old, so I'm not that old as the time of Skulduggery, but I'm old.
I mean, I was thinking the other day, I think they actually photoshopped some of the wrinkles out of my forehead and gave me a little bit more hair. So thanks to them for that. So anyway, getting back to this marriage, another tradition was that they would have the men in the village would have a race, and what they would do is they'd have to race to Thomas Rushworth's cottage, and on the bed there, and obviously the cottage was all cleaned out, and there was rose petals and food and flowers on the walls and all that type of thing, and on the bed there'd be a tankard of ale, and the man that ran there the quickest and got into the cottage and took a sip of this ale was the winner. Right. So then whoever won was able to sort of like walk back to the feast, and he would be given what's the thing called around the women wears around the garter.
Oh,
right? They'd be given the garter, right? But it was quite rough because they'd kick and punch, and not the man and wife, but I mean the guys running to
the guys racing, yeah.
Wow. Just like the old football over there, the old ball they used to play. So it's like village against village with 200 men trying to move a ball, 2 kilometers to a post in the other village.
Yeah.
Can you read this?
Yeah. Joe says, so plenty of time to change their minds, LOL.
Reading the bands.
We need to take a break for our sponsors here.
A word from our sponsors.
We'll be back in 3 minutes, y'all.
Don't go away.
Don't go away. Once we get to the right one, we'll be fine. Okay.
You don't want to do the show outro right now.
No, not yet. Okay.
Good.
See you in a few.
People Who Like to Read Want to Get Their Hands on Books by Becca Jones.
Becca Jones, the breakthrough author who tells it like it is. It takes courage to tell a story when it reveals dark secrets. Becca Jones delves deep into the hidden world of sexual abuse. She tells what happened and also tells how she survived.
Meant to Be is much more than just entertaining. Meant to Be gives you a point of reference, hope to cling to, and becomes a guide for survival if you have suffered the same thing. Meant to Be, Becca Jones, a must-have.
Meant to Be is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites.
It's 1919. Back from the war in Europe, Eric Lasko returns to Floodwood Station, Ohio, the small coal mining town he calls home. There, he faces new foes. One poses a threat to his personal long-term relationship. The other is lurking in the adjacent Hocking Hills State Forest, a vicious, incredibly lethal beast driven by bloodlust. An 11-year-old girl and an old man have seen the creature, but no one believes the claims of a young child and a known drunk. When the first body is found, Eric, his father and brother, become suspects in his grisly death. To clear himself and his family, Eric must prove the beast exists. As the gruesome body count rises, the immigrant miners realize what's stalking their town. Every country calls it by a different name, but the creature is the same: werewolf. Who is it? The residents reach a conclusion, but are they right?
Now on Kindle Vella. Paradise, My Prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Published by Fresh Ink Group, Paradise, My Prison is on Kindle Vella with 3 free episodes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes.
And we're back. So, Paul, you have prepared a reading for us. Is that right?
Yeah. So, well, I was going to read a chapter out of my new novel coming out, but I think I'll leave that, and I'll just read you a couple of pages from Red Winter Journey, and it's actually one of the smallest chapters in the novel, but it's sort of like a side shoot story off of the main story, and it's a bit of a love story. So I'll read that. Okay, so William had discovered that she was from Stanbury, a small village 1 mile west of Haworth. Lucy told William where she lived on the freehold farm owned by her father. She requested him to call on her so that they could meet and ask for permission to see each other. Back at home, Lucy told her father of the courtship. "Father, please." Lucy's father was shocked and dismayed by the news. "What do you know of this man and his family? They are good, they're honest." "Lucy, you do not need to shout." Lucy's father walked into the sitting room and sat down on the high-backed wooden chair near the fire. Lucy followed him in and quietened her tone respectfully and stood in front of him. "Family, father." The father looked into the fire. He was upset and afraid that he would lose her sooner than he wanted to, for he knew that marrying the right man was important to her future and their families. He thought about the importance of this union. Lucy would be labelled according to the status of her husband. Yes, she did have a dubious reputation locally from working at the King's Arms, but that was all a ruse that her future husband would never need to know about. No, he wanted her to have a better life than what he had, so it was paramount that she married a man of higher station, a man with lands, a man with means. Her father looked at her curiously. "Yes, and does he own lands?" Lucy paused. "I'm not sure, father. I know he's a freeman." This comment angered him. "A freeman? That's all you know? And how do you know this man? Please don't say the King's Arms. What's his name?" Lucy paused again and lowered her voice, expecting the worst. "His name's William Rushworth." "William Rushworth? Absolutely not, Lucy. I've known the family for years," declared her father. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. Lucy ran to the window. "It's him, father. Please be civil." "What already? This is absurd, Lucy." "For me. Father, for me." William had arrived early, dressed in his Sunday best. He'd washed the grit from his nails and wet down his hair. He had a small posy of autumn flowers in his hand. He nervously knocked on the door, and he could hear stomping on the wooden floor and some heated exchange. He knocked on the door again and nervously waited for someone to open it. He looked at the posy and then down at the gravel, moving it with the side of his thin leather boot. The door opened. William looked down at a shiny pair of black leather shoes with a grand silver buckle. He nervously raised his head a little and took note of the beige hose and the blue garter tied at the knee. He raised his head even further to notice the tan breeches, then further examined the white fabric of the shirt. Finally, he looked up to see Lucy's father in the face. The steward stood there, carefully caressing his thin grey moustache on his upper lip, then ran his hand down to a neatly trimmed beard. He had the look of sheer evil in his eyes. "Steward, your grace." William was completely taken by surprise and took a step backwards on the gravel. The steward paused and looked William up and down, then grumbled, "What do you want, boy?" William held on to the posy in front of him. I've brought these for Lucy, sir." The steward looked at the flowers. They had wilted somewhat since he had picked them. The steward just stood there holding the edge of the door as if he was about to slam it shut. William stood for what seemed like an eternity, watching the steward look him up and down with a look of disdain, waiting for the acknowledgement, but it didn't come. Lucy appeared at the door. "William!" She stepped forward and grabbed William's hand and pulled him inside the house, much to the steward's annoyance. She led him into the farmhouse. It had 2 rooms, a grand set of stairs, and another 2 rooms upstairs. Lucy led him into the first door, the sitting room. It had a large window that faced the front of the house. It was a large room, but it was comfortable with a solid oak chair table, clean stone pavers on the floor. There was a simple high-backed wooden form decorated with a set of red cushions in the middle of the room. There were 2 high-backed wooden chairs placed near the fireplace. A small oak table sat underneath the window with an iron candle holder. The candle, half melted drips of wax, had dried as it flowed down the side. Lucy nervously waited for her father to enter the room. The steward entered. "Lucy, wait for us in the kitchen, please." "Father, please don't." Lucy looked at him with a feeling of trepidation. The steward looked at Lucy sternly and repeated, "Lucy, wait for us in the kitchen." She didn't want to make it any worse, so she let go of William's hand and walked toward the door. Looking back, William stood there holding the posy of flowers that had wilted even further. She walked out of the room, but not without giving her father a despicable look. Lucy stopped, sadness in her eyes. She took one more look at William before closing the door slowly to prolong their parting. "Sit down, Rushworth." The steward gestured for William to sit at the high-backed form in the middle of the room. "I'm okay, Your Grace. I would rather stand," said William bravely, having some idea about the coming conversation. The steward stood facing him with a serious, expressionless look on his face. "What are you doing here, William?" William stood there bravely, not forcing himself, not to be intimidated by the man who all the village feared. "I'd like to court your daughter, sir." The steward looked down at William's muddy shoes. "William, you know that's not going to happen. I don't know what you've said to attract her, but you know she's not for you." William took a breath to steady himself. "Sir, I'd like to court your daughter, Lucy." The steward smiled with repugnance. "William, you're a good lad. I like you. I like your family. But you know this isn't right. William, what do you have to offer her? You have no land. Your family pays dues to the Lord, which you can't afford. You have no stock, little means, and no future." William stood there looking downtrodden and dejected. "Sir, I'd like to court your daughter. Lucy, I'll work hard." The steward cut him off. "William, you know you don't want this. I'll give you 10 shillings to turn and walk the other way. Look what you could do with your family with that." "Sir, I don't want your coin. I want to court Lucy." The steward started to get angry. "God damn it, boy. Will you not see sense?" The steward walked off toward the door, opened it, and walked down toward the kitchen. As he did, Lucy came running past him to the sitting room. She slowed as she got to the door, looked in to see William standing there holding the flowers that dangled toward the ground, limp and lifeless. The petals had fallen like his heart. Can't hear you. There's no sound.
There we go.
There, sorry.
So what happened?
That's all right.
We want to know what happened.
Yeah,
But that's okay.
You'll have to buy the book.
Yes, there
That's
you go.
right. that was really good, though.
Really good.
That was good. So
you.
they were actually from 2 different classes. I mean,
Yeah. And
Wow.
it's quite interesting, the background of that, and also what happens. And a lot of people don't know this, but Skulduggery, Red Winter Journey, and Dream of Courage is actually a series. But I've written it in such a way that you can either pick up one of the books and read it on itself, by itself, or you can read all three, and they lightly join generationally, right? So if you know William and Lucy in Skulduggery, their sort of like life continues a little bit as a side story in Red Winter Journey.
Excellent. Joe Conjal says, awesome reading. Love it. I'm hooked. Now I want all my books read in an Australian accent.
Thanks, Joe.
It was really good. So I'm interested to know, did that happen during that day, that someone from another class could marry up like that?
Oh, look, as you know, back then England was very divided by class.
Oh yeah.
And but I mean, there was really I don't want to give you any spoilers.
No, don't.
So it could happen. It could happen, but it was a very difficult situation, because with the peasant people, not so much with the lords and the ladies and the rich, but with the peasant people, usually the women had more of a say in who they were going to be together with, whereas with the richer people and the lords and the ladies, it was usually the father that actually determined who they were going to marry, because obviously quite often those marriages with rich people were more a financial and political joining rather than love.
Right. Well, that's really fascinating.
He was
really
certainly persistent, wasn't he?
Yes, not faint of heart, our William.
Yeah, and he has a difficult. I'll just say this: he has a difficult time of it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And of course, without his brother and his stepfather around, because they were off journeying through Yorkshire in wintertime, trying to get their son back. So really, he had no real support as he was going through that.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
Joe Conjal says, Paul, are you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, you told me about a pantser last time we spoke.
Yeah.
That's no, Joe. I never plan anything. I just start writing. People sort of say to me, yeah, people say to me, where does it come from? And I say I have absolutely no idea. I just sit down at the computer and start typing, and all these crazy ideas come out of my head. I suppose I've got a good imagination, and I really like that. I suppose when I don't plan, it gives me so much freedom to put twists of plot and that type of thing into the books. And I'll just be typing away, and all of a sudden I'll think, oh, wouldn't that be interesting if this particular character did this or was that or that type of thing. So it gives me an enormous amount of freedom, and I just love putting those plot twists in my novels.
Good. I think most of us are pantsers also, not plotters.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of sort of like sitting down with a bit of paper and saying, okay, this character does this character does that. This is going to be the end of the story, and that it doesn't appeal to me. I mean, Skulduggery, I actually rewrote, and I actually the original ending is in there, and there's a new ending now, and because of that ending, I had to go back and develop the characters a little bit more. So the second edition is actually about 100 pages longer.
Excellent.
Cool.
Marjorie Daring says, when you're a pantser, you can turn on a dime. That makes the writing process very exciting.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree. Yes.
Well, I think it's time for our second and last break.
Wow.
And
time is flying.
It is. It is.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It's
Yeah,
time travel.
for
It does
real.
That's what does it. When we come back, we're going to let everybody know how to reach you. You're all over the place, so we'll just give them a few places where they can reach you. Maybe they'll catch up with you.
You can go
there.
to his website and see all the other places.
People probably say, "Oh, not this guy again."
And then we're going to also have a book giveaway. So hang
Stay
in there,
tuned.
and we'll be right back.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth?
Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than three-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
First, there was Siren Song, then Siren Song 2. Now comes The Siren Hunter, a continuing saga about Angie Holland and her never-ending battle with the mythological denizens that are not even supposed to exist. Is The Siren Hunter a conclusion to the undersea horror? Only the sirens know for sure.
The Siren Hunter, now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Or contact this podcast. The trilogy is complete.
Madison Jackson loved being a cop. A young girl is raped and murdered near Burnett Reservoir. Madison vows to get justice for the child. Madison travels to the heart of Mexican cartel country. She is kidnapped, tortured. Will Madison ever make it home? Justice by Kelly Marshall, only at Amazon.com.
Welcome back. And George Dismuke says, love the Australian accent. So people from down under really do sound like Crocodile Dundee.
I don't know about that, but I've had a number of accents in my life. Just while before I forget, can I just do a bit of a shout out to Author's Porch magazine, on the Author's Porch magazine. CJ and Rudy have worked tirelessly to develop that magazine, and obviously with me as a feature. And also there's one other person, my PA, Haley. She does all my social media stuff and some articles and that. So big shout out to her. She's just worked tirelessly.
All right.
Awesome. Well, it shows because you're out there. Not out there, but all over social media. That's what I mean. Yeah. Anyway, let's tell everybody where they can reach you, and then we're going to do the book giveaway. And so first of all, it's on his website is Paul Rushworth-Brown Skulduggery Winter of Red.com. That's a whole lot of letters. That's PaulRushworthBrown Skulduggerywinterofred.com. gmail.com. I'm not
actually probably the easiest way to get to the website is to just punch in Skulduggery /Howarth /Skulduggery /Australia, and that'll take you straight to the website.
Okay. Cool. Everybody got that? I'm not going to spell all that. All right. Next is Facebook. It's author Paul Rushworth-Brown. And on Twitter, @Brown9Paul. And LinkedIn is Paul Rushworth-Brown. And
Brown.
And email, we've got paulbrown630 @gmail.com. And for the book giveaway, we're talking about the book giveaway. The first 3 people to email paulbrown630 @gmail.com will win an ebook copy of Red Winter Journey. So get typing there, guys.
And also, what I'll do is because Authors on the Porches in the US, I'll organize for a free copy of their magazine to be sent out to them as well.
Ooh,
awesome.
Okay, that's awesome.
Or at least, if it's not the paper copy, a electronic copy.
Is that for anybody that contacts you or just the people that win?
Just the people that win the 3
Okay,
books.
all right.
The three people.
The 3 lucky people.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That's not only a wonderful novel, but also a nice bonus there with that magazine.
Yeah,
that's
type
cool.
in Joe.
The magazine looks very interesting. So.
Yeah, I know Joe was interested in reading it.
Yeah.
So this is your chance to read it for free, the first copy.
So we haven't touched on it much, but your newest one that's coming out. When does that come out?
Comes out in November.
November.
It's just going through the editing process now.
Okay.
Dream of Courage.
Can you give us a little bit of a synopsis on that one in particular?
Sure. So it takes place after the English Civil War, where both the Parliamentary Army and the Royalists have basically destroyed food crops and killed all the animals, and people are starving, and the Rushworths are in the same boat. Anyway, John and Robert Rushworth, they need to leave because obviously the family have enough mouths to feed as it is. So they're getting a bit older, and they decide to leave, and they go to the closest major city, Leeds, which a lot of people were doing at the time, to make their fortune, really, because they wanted to make their fortune and obviously help their family out. So they go to Leeds, and they meet up with the wrong crowd, so to speak. And Robert gets himself into a bit of trouble. John's the good one. He finds a job in a wool mill, but Robert, how can I say this? He just gets in with the wrong people, breaks a couple of laws, and it's so many twists and turns. I've just got to be so careful. There's a guy by the name of Jacob Wilding, who's actually a brogger. And what a brogger is somebody that is sort of like a middleman. Around that time, this was sort of like the development of sort of like the middle class and the manufacturing class. And what the brogger did is he bought wool from farmers and sold it at a higher price to clothiers or people that make cloth. But what they do is they'd stick a lot of the cloth, the wool away and wait for prices to go up and then sell it. But what happened, Jacob Wilding borrows money from the company and he can't pay it back because the king decides that brogging is to be outlawed. Even though it was still occurring, it was outlawed. So he couldn't sell his wool. He owed the company, £20 or whatever. And so they want to get to him. So to make a long story short, he ends up chasing or trying to find Robert Rushworth and take him back to Leeds because he'd done something illegal to hang.
Ooh.
So then there's a love story in there between, you don't know whether Ursula and Robert will ever be together. Is he going to be hanged? Is he ever going to see his family again? And then he spends time in a Leeds prison, which is quite interesting in itself.
So this takes place like in the 1650s, or
no, it'd be sort of like the mid 1700s,
or the 1700s.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the English Civil War started in 1642
and ended in 1651. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's probably beginning of the 1700s. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So well after the end of the war, but nobody had been able to recoup yet or anything like that.
But it's a very interesting time in English history, because around that time there were pirates. There was a lot of the royalists. Some of the royalist soldiers became highwaymen, where they'd hold up carriages and all that type of thing.
Right.
And obviously this whole I suppose story about the early wool industry is sort of like it's very interesting how people lived and how they survived. I mean, it was the start of the almshouses where people and poorhouses. There was laws brought out where sort of like richer people had to take in a peasant as a servant, or else get fined and that type of thing. So that's all sort of like things that happen in there that's really quite interesting. And it also quite a lot of it actually takes place on the sea as well, because there's pirates involved.
Cool. We love pirates.
Kind of makes you glad you live now.
Yeah.
Not then, right?
Yeah. I mean, I sort of like think to myself, tracing my family history back, how on earth am I here?
Right.
They lived through the plague. They lived through, numerous wars. Just amazing. Yeah. Things like that we take for granted, like tuberculosis or consumption, whooping cough. That the age of longevity in health around that time was about 35.
Ah.
Right. Babies were dying before the age of 5 of whooping cough, dysentery. So I'm very lucky that I'm here.
S. Wurzel author says it's fascinating, which I agree. And Joe Conjal said he had to send the email twice. He hopes it got there.
You don't get 2 copies, Joe.
Yeah, I hope. Well, look for Joe Conjal. Make sure that you got it. If you didn't, let us know. We'll make sure.
He tried.
Actually, Beth is a good friend of mine. She's actually got a new book out called Calling Clarissa. Very, very funny. She's been on. She has a show called The Woody Writers Show.
Right. We've seen that. Yeah.
Actually, Beth says, out of all the family members you discovered, who would you love to talk to?
Oh, probably Thomas Rushworth, the guy from 1590. Just to sit down with him for sort of like 20 minutes and find out really what his life was like. I know that he lost a number of children through consumption, and his father passed away, quite sad actually.
Very.
Yeah, that's amazing. Haley Brown said, "Can I sit down with you both?" Yeah, that's
my PA. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah. Welcome aboard.
Doing a good job, for real. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to live in the 1500s.
No.
Or the
1700s.
No. I was saying before about there's this abandoned building. It's called Top Withens, and it's on the moors just outside Haworth. Yorkshire, and that was sort of like the story of Charlotte Bronte's Wuthering Heights was actually set so like they think it was set so like around Top Withens, and my wife and I went to Howth and sort of like hiked up into the moors to see this abandoned building, and this was in the middle of summer, and we both had sort of like windbreak jackets on, and it was freezing. You know, I mean, it took us about probably a good half an hour to walk up there, but once we got up there, I couldn't believe how cold it was, and that was in summer. Imagine winter time when there's 2 foot of snow on the ground, no central heating. They have to walk, you know, 2 or 3 miles to get water. You know, have to walk over to the bog to cut some peat for the fire. I mean, just incredible how they lived.
And today we can't live without heat and air conditioning, you know.
Or our cell phones.
Joe Conchal said you may have lived. He's talking about me living in the 1500s, reincarnation. Nope. I don't do reincarnation. Once is enough for me. This is hard enough. I don't want to do it 500 times. Thanks a lot. Beth wants to know, have you been able to find any of your old family's homes?
Oh, it was very, very, very difficult. The closest I got was I actually know, because he was a copy holder for Lord Birkhead, I have a really, really good idea what part of Howth he would have lived in, because I found old maps of where the old manor was, and what land probably would have been owned by Lord Birkhead. So I have a very, very good idea, and because he was a copy holder, a very, very good idea of where he probably would have lived.
That's interesting.
I can say exactly.
Yeah, I wonder if any of those homes would have survived that long.
Oh, no. Well, I mean, if you look at the old map,
not of the peasantry, but of course for the lords, they did. You can.
Oh, the manor house is still there.
Yeah,
they've actually turned it into I think it's a restaurant and a bed and breakfast, I believe. Yeah, that's still there. Yeah, very interesting. But living in one of those cruck houses, daub and wattle houses in that type of terrain, that type of weather.
Last. Yeah. George Dismuke says, are there still a lot of historical structures remaining in Australia?
We do our best. Obviously, Australia is a very young country. Probably the most interesting thing historically that I've seen is sort of like up north in the Northern Territory. You can go to certain places where there's Aboriginal sort of like paintings on rock faces and that type of thing.
Nice.
And when I was up there, you could actually see, thousands of year old paintings of kangaroos and wallabies. But even later, there's actually very crude paintings of the old tall ships that used to float by.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Now that's I bet you love looking at that.
Yeah, it was incredible. And
for real.
We had this Aboriginal gentleman take us all up through the escarpments, and you actually need a special visa to go in there. And in the rainy season, it's actually cut off. You can't get in there. So the only way they can get out is by helicopter or plane. And it's like this particular town that we went to. You wouldn't even think that you're in Australia.
So George Dismuke says, I remember reading about the British Crown sending Captain Bligh to Australia to run a prison.
Yeah.
Do you know about that?
I mean, there's a number of really old prisons in Australia. There's one in in Tasmania, and there's one in Fanny Bay, and they're really, great. Sort of like, if you're interested in history, they're great sort of like places to wander around and see how they were treated. The tiny little cells that they lived in, and that type of thing. So yeah, that's definitely another historical adventure in Australia.
I know that. Go ahead. I was going to say, I know that some of the prisons are haunted there.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. There's one where they used to put all of the people that were dying of, I guess maybe yellow fever, or I don't remember what.
That's the quarantine station.
The quarantine station where people in Sydney, that's super haunted.
I've been there. And it is crazy. I mean, I'm not into that all that type of thing, but even going into this place, and we stayed overnight because it's sort of like in one of the quarantine houses. And yeah, you're right. People that come in from overseas, they used to stick them there for a few weeks until they could tell that they were healthy, and then they could sort of like move on. But yeah, I've been there, and it's got a crazy atmosphere.
I bet.
As soon as you walk in there, you can sort of like sense something.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, when we were there was a thunderstorm, and
wow,
all the lights went out.
Uh-oh.
Wow.
And so we're standing in this, I think it was some sort of a barn or something, and there was you're in pitch black, and you can do a tour around, so you can go into the morgue, and we went into the morgue, and they play a trick on you. It's sort of like a bang on the walls while you're sort of like standing there in darkness.
Jump scares.
Jump scares.
Interesting. Yeah, but very interesting place. You got to come to Australia.
Yeah, 22-hour flight.
Yeah.
Don't you bring Australia here?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes.
Start rowing.
Yeah. Joe Condrell says road trip. If it could be a road trip, we would go.
Yeah. Well, let's face it. We've got part of America in the middle of Australia anyway, with Pine Gap.
There you go.
Have you heard about that?
Oh yes, they've even done a series about it on.
Okay. Right.
Okay. George was saying that. Well, he said that was in 1990 or thereabout, Captain Bligh, but he didn't mean that.
Captain
He
Bligh's
meant,
great grandson.
1790. 1790 is when Bligh did it. But I bet a lot of those old prisons are haunted. They usually are.
I'm going to go up here because Beth asked about the Australian Book Festival.
All right.
Okay. Beth says, how was the Australian Book Festival?
Oh, Book Fair Australia was great. So I'm going again this year. They've asked me to do more interviews. What I did last year, 2022, is I set up a little booth that my wife ran, but off the side. I set up a camera and a microphone and lights and that, and actually interviewed other Australian authors. Oh yeah, I've sent a couple of the interviews to you.
We've run them on our.
And what we're planning on doing here is, after you get some more this fall, is to have Meet the Author podcast Aussie edition, and running them, as some short shows.
All your interviews.
Yeah, your interviews.
Yeah,
so
do them as short, like a.
I mean, they only go for I think about 7 minutes.
They're
each.
short, and
then what I do is I put there's a special page on my website just to sort of like promote Australian authors and their work.
We'll run them on our playlist on our YouTube channel.
Our YouTube.
So we'll get that running.
Get Australian authors
so.
out in America.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's tough for Australian authors, obviously, because we don't have the same population that you guys do, and also let's face it, a lot of people are sort of like turning to things like Audible and so like the online books and that type of thing. And it makes it very, very difficult for authors because, I know of a couple of websites, namely in Russia, where you can just get on there and just sort of like have any book you like, just download it so that you can read. It doesn't cost a thing.
China does the same thing.
Yeah. So
all of our books have been pirated in China.
Yeah.
It's
just giving Australian authors that little bit of, I suppose, support, because we've got some great authors over here. I mean, Beth Worsdale's a fantastic author. Gillian Gills, she's a great author. She's written something like 10 books. It's definitely part of my big plan to develop that exposure for Australian authors.
Yeah, we've had a few Australian authors on. It's usually difficult because, Beth says thank you. It's usually difficult because of the time difference.
Yeah.
So like
makes it different.
Wendy, she has a full-time job. Wendy Scott was on. She's a great author.
She's from New Zealand. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, she's from New Zealand, but it's the same time difference. It's the same kind of
close.
problem.
Yeah.
And I just think, it's too bad. It's difficult too to get authors on in England too because of the time difference.
Yeah, same problem.
Because it's too late there. It's too early for you guys. So most authors have another job, right? They're not making their living being an author. And so then to get them on.
And New Zealand even has a smaller population than we do.
Right.
So it'd be even more difficult for a Kiwi author. I mean, that's sort of like one of the main reasons why. I mean, I have my books translated into Hindi. Make sure they're available in numerous different countries. Because when I first started, Shawline Publishing, when I signed that contract with Shawline Publishing, they were only interested in sort of like promoting Australian work in Australia and New Zealand. And I thought to myself, it has to be more than that. So that's why I went sort of like global. So my books are sold in England now, as I say, translated into Hindi, translated into Russian. It's a big job.
Yeah,
that's good. Especially historical fiction. I think it's important to get that out there.
Right.
So.
Yeah, it's an interesting, very interesting genre. That's why with my novels, there's always sort of like a little bit of intrigue. There's romance. There's crime. There's mystery, whodunits. There's all that type of thing. So hopefully that appeals to all. Obviously, all set in back in 16th, 17th, 18th century. But hopefully that allows my novels to appeal to a greater group of people.
And it's people overcoming.
Yeah.
Overcoming great obstacles, and that's great.
It speaks hope.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, it does.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I want to thank you. We're running late now, so I want to thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure, and we have fun visiting with you. And I'm sure we'll have you back again.
Yeah.
Look, Joan, I really appreciate your time. It's been great getting to know you, and just this sort of like format where you can just sort of like sit here and basically just having a bit of a chat. And,
that's
the whole point. It's a good format. And I think in this format, you really, really do get to know the authors.
Exactly.
Right.
Because there isn't like specific questions. Quite often, if there's sort of like especially like me, if there's a time where nobody's saying anything, it sometimes forces the author to talk about something that comes to his mind. So, and quite often that can show something else about that particular author, which is great.
Right.
So I thank you very much for your time and for your
You're
efforts.
welcome. Thank you also.
We appreciate you.
Joe Conjal said, great show tonight. Thank you, Paul. And of course, Robin Joan. Thanks, you, Joe. George the Smook says, got a boogie. Great listening to you, Paul. Interesting how much we have in common.
Thanks, George.
And Beth says, Paul, you're always awesome to watch.
Thanks, Beth.
Okay, well, stay right where you're at, Paul. We're going to move you over to the side here, like that. And then wait till we come back to you.
Sure.
In the news, I did have one thing we didn't talk about. But next week, of course, we're going to be traveling. Live from San Leon is where we're going to be broadcasting. But on Monday, the 3rd of July, we're going to be streaming live from Haunted Hill House in Mineral Wells, Texas. And that's going to be an investigation, paranormal investigation. It's at 8 p.m. Eastern time here in the U.S. So do your math and change everything that you got to. It's going to be at least a couple-hour show probably, and
we'll be there a lot longer than a couple of hours.
We're going to be there all night. We'll be there until in the morning. Then we'll have another show where we'll show a lot of our results from that investigation.
If we get results.
Yeah, and hopefully we will.
Yeah.
And then on the 5th, Wednesday, the 5th, on our regular show, Meet the Author, we're going to be live from Fort Worth, Texas, with a few of our favorite authors there. So that's what's coming up, folks. And I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. And do you have anything else you would like to talk about?
No, I do not. I think I am done.
Stay tuned for Voice of Indie podcast instructions are coming right up. And until next time.
That's all, folks.
Night.
Good night.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB.com.
You've been listening to WLFE-DB.com, where our shows are your shows.